Hey, what's going on, guys? Apologies if you hear some background noise. I'm currently doing laundry. Um, so biggest thing today that I wanted to really do was just talk about the Amazing Digital Circus and how that has impacted me and how I feel about with everything that went for the finale, for the series in general, and just everything for it. I originally intended to do this as a reaction when the final episode came out, but as I was filming it, I realized that there was way too much to just compile into a single, like, at most 3 minute short. So I decided to give it a little while and rewatch it a couple more times and just give out some raw reactions. And to do that, I actually even rewatched it again last night and a little bit this morning. So that I had a little bit of a fresh idea of with what went on in the finale. And honestly, I gotta say, with all the independent projects that there are, surprisingly, this one has been like the first one that I've actually seen. And I actually really like it. I really loved the concept of it. The fact that they took a dark short story, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, and turned it into a more childlike world of wonderment and had more lessons in there. It just makes it so interesting to watch. Honestly, my favorite character in the entire series has been Kinger, just because how crazy he is, and also just kind of because he's the dad of the group. I just love that about him. Um, so the biggest thing about this is I'm going to be talking about the finale, and I am definitely going to be going into spoilers. But before we get to the finale, I'm going to talk about the first 8 episodes in a shortened concept as well, because there was just a lot that went on for the entire show altogether. So the first thing about it is that episode one, that was the great pilot episode, and personally speaking, I rewatched that so many times, and even when other episodes came out, I always went back to that one in particular to start off a rewatch of the entire series each time an episode came out. And honestly, it was that I didn't exactly get into the show right away. I think it was probably about a week after the show came out that I was finally that I saw it on my YouTube feed, and and essentially I just went, "Huh, well, that looks interesting. Let me check it out." Um, Actually, I lied. About a week after it came out, it showed up on my YouTube feed, and I think about a week after that is when I finally watched it. Every time saw it beforehand, I was like, I don't know about this. But then I finally got to sit down and watch it, and I was just blown away by it. Just the fact that it was just so child friendly with the swearing filters, and just the fact of the characters, and the story was just so engaging, and I really wanted to know what happened next. And I was basically like rewatching it like once a week, ever since I first saw it, just so I could pick up some of the more details on it, and especially with the fact of subtitles kind of thing, because I'm one who enjoys watching something on its own, and someone who on a second viewing will watch it with subtitles kind of thing if they're available, just so that I can pick up what exactly is being said a lot of the time, and also see if there's any like hidden details the from what the script is, from what's written in the script versus what I hear kind of thing. Because sometimes I need to hear it and read it at the same time to understand what's being said. And that was something that kept going on for the rest of the series kind of thing. So when episode two came out, that one I actually didn't even know about until after I watched another channel talking about it. And yeah, I was very late on watching a lot of these episodes. I have no idea why. But episode two actually was very fun as well because that one, it was just going through a little bit more about how the world works and what adventures really entail. Also, just the fact of Gummy Goo having a bit of an existential crisis, and Pomni was the one who comforted him and got him to come with her back to the circus, only for him to be killed in the end. And Kate just didn't even bat an eye at it. He was just like, "Well, I'm gonna do a terrible impression of him, by the way, but it was just the fact that Kane literally killed him, then instantly said, "Well, I'm gonna go drink water." It's been a while since I've done that, and I legit just did not see that coming, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, episode two essentially was a little bit darker than episode one, and honestly, with the fact that all the actors kept constantly saying this is not a series to show to kids, I can understand where they were coming from with the second episode. Um, and yeah, just the fact that we got a little bit more character development for, or a little bit more character moments for like the I'll just call them the side characters because Pomni is essentially the main character of this show. But seeing as how we got a little bit more development and moments for the side characters, notably with Jax, Ragatha, and Kinger, notably, um, that was actually really fun because episode two was definitely the first time we got to see Dad Kinger, along with Jax's more sadistic nature. Which honestly, that one is just some of my favorite parts. It's just, I'm sorry, just the fact that he just go that when the Fudge is like killed, he just goes, "I am so unbelievably disappointed right now." I just, I legit just bust a gut every time he just wants there to be blood, death, carnage, and all this like cruel stuff to happen in the adventures. It's just so funny. Um, yeah. And the episode did end on a bit of a nicer note, and I do like that about it as well because, well, for one, um, we saw what abstractions was like in episode one, and episode two showed us what characters do, what everybody does after somebody abstracts. They hold a funeral service, and it's something that I actually kind of enjoyed a little bit because there was definitely a lot that was just like going on for it. And with it being like 2 days, with this going on in within like 2 days kind of thing, maybe three or something. No, it was definitely two. Because they actually even said in episode two, that yesterday was a doozy and all that stuff. So definitely episode two happened the day after episode one. So that was actually pretty interesting and pretty nice to see that in these 2 days, there was just a lot that went on for Pomni. Um, yeah. Episode three, that one, I will admit, when episode three came out and I saw the thumbnail for it, I was a little bit skeptical, mostly because I'm personally not a fan of horror. Um, so yeah, there is that. Um, well, rather, I'm not a fan of horror unless it's done in a certain style for it. So, for example, I'm currently watching through Supernatural with my mom every chance that I get. And while I'm not too keen on all the stuff that's going on there, we're currently on season 13 where it's getting to less of like pure supernatural stuff and more of just, oh, we're dealing more with angels, demons, and like the like stuff that's related to them, like more uh spirits and stuff. So there is that. I also really loved Gravity Falls. That one I think handled horror in a kid's setting to the best degree because it wasn't that it was like too scary or too kid friendly. It found a perfect middle ground for everything. It had just the right amount of scares and the right amount of laughs to make everything work. Um, and another example of that is like Scooby Doo, which is to a lesser degree, but still, there are times when there are some Scooby Doo things that have gotten me to like actively like shiver with fear kind of thing. And honestly, when I took a first look at the thumbnail for episode 3 of the Amazing Digital Circus, it was a little bit like a little bit too unsettling kind of thing. And well, regardless, I did watch it. And I will say, it wasn't as scary as I originally assumed it would be. There are still plenty of scares in it, but it kind of goes the same route as with something like Supernatural and Gravity Falls kind of thing, because there was just a nice like kidly vibe for everything. Like the character of Ghostly and also the jokes that went on, along with the fact that one of the doors went to a pacifist route where the ghosts were actually friendly and stuff, and literally they just sat down for tea. Um, but then there was also the door that Kinger and Pomni went through, and that one was like the scary door kind of thing. Um, so as I was watching it and when it got to that point, I was just like, okay, so I have no idea how to feel about this and that kind of thing. Because it was just like it started off with points of showing like decapitated heads, like the trophies that hunters get, but it was all the heads of the Amazing Digital Circus cast. And it just was very unsettling. And then, um, but the biggest thing about it was that every time there was a scare in that, Kinger was there to make it funny. Just for an example, when we first saw the angel demon head, actually it was an angel, um, the angel head like shriek and stuff. Kinger, there's literally like it shrieks, a moment of pause, and then Kinger just going, "I'm sorry, could you speak up? I couldn't quite make that out." And it literally just made me crack up, kind of thing. Um, I don't think it made me crack up the first time I was watching it because I was a little bit too worried about myself for the scares. But every time after that I rewatched it, I just burst out laughing at that because I mean, who doesn't love Kinger? It feels like an impossibility to not love Kinger. Um, but it was in that episode that we got to learn more about Kinger and Zubul. And what I really loved about it was that it felt natural for both of them. Kinger, we found out more about him, and the fact that he's more sane in the dark really made it so incredible for me. And um honestly, with the fact that he was just someone, he just feels like someone you can just really talk to and just put uh and who will just put time and effort into understanding you and figuring out how to help you. It just made him so much more fun to watch. And then with Zubul, we found out that they don't like the way they look. And I use they because apparently, with what I've researched, Zubul uses every pronoun. So I'm just going to refer to Zubul as they. Um, but Zubul just doesn't like the way they look. And it was in this episode that there was a first glimpse at something deeper with them. In that, when Zubul talks about every other character in it, They do a sort of jester kind of thing. So they do. So if I remember correctly, it was Kinger's insane. Jax just likes to with people. Uh, Ragatha's too nice to say anything. But then we got Gangle. Gangle's too shy to say anything, and it was like they held their hand on their heart. And a lot of people picked up on that and assumed, oh, there must be something a lot deeper than that. And we kind of were right. Um, According to Gooseworks, they were just really good friends, but I think Gooseworks would have been partially trolling with us because in just about every single episode that we see them together, it looks like they are much more than friends. Um, but yeah, episode three did also end on a very nice note because I loved Pomni and Kinger's relationship that started in this episode because Pomni essentially feels like the child who doesn't really know what they're wanting to do and just wants to do everything they can to make sure everyone else is doing good. Whereas Kinger, as I said before, and as many have pointed out, is the dad of the group. And he's there to help guide her, essentially. And I really love that about him. Um, Episode four then was more Gangle's episode. And that one was actually one of my favorite episodes to go for because it just was so much fun to see all these characters in the kind of environment that they were in, which was a fast food restaurant. Um, so it's actually even funnier because I really liked one of the comments on it, which was essentially, I don't remember what it was exactly. Hang on, let me look it up real quick. Thank goodness I have my phone with me. Let me see here. Here we go. It was Pomni being the sort of newbie who does their job but is a bit uncomfortable because they just started, which, yeah, that was actually pretty fun. Jax is the coworker who's been working there for way too long and is desperate to try to get out of there. Which honestly, yeah, that kind of tracks for him. I feel like he would want to just leave, but he can't because it's an adventure. Uh, Zubul being the coworker who doesn't like their job but understands that they're there to work and may as well do it right. I will say half the time that feels like me because I've been in jobs that I just don't really like and aren't really my calling. Which I feel like YouTube and being a voice actor kind of thing have been my passion. I've just never had the complete drive to go for it. Um, but I still do the job that I have as best I can to make it all flow and work. Um, Gangle being a former coworker promoted to manager who's having trouble leading her new team who don't see her any differently. Which, yeah, I would also say that Gangle kind of feels like someone who was promoted to manager before they were even ready for it. And I've actually seen that a couple times where some of my coworkers at my current job, which I work at a liquor store, some of my coworkers have been there for like maybe a couple months and where they have like such strong personalities kind of thing that they while they're essentially like just standard team members kind of thing where they're like salespeople, they act and work and sometimes I kind of see them as like full on managers kind of thing. Whereas there have been other people who were promoted to manager and they had like little to no experience to and drive to actually be manager. But also, um, this is not a video about me and my work. So I'm just gonna stop it there. Um, but then the last one was Ragatha being the one who comes in high and just makes things harder. And honestly, with the way that Ragatha was on the stupid sauce, I could actually see that. I will say I've not had any experience of anyone who comes in who is like on anything and just making things harder, but I've more so had people who just like messing around so much that they just essentially don't do their job properly, and so everything else starts to suffer for it. And I'll admit I'm kind of like that too, but I more so make jokes to help the day go by quicker. I don't do things uh like just come in and just start screwing with things. But bigger thing about this episode was this was an and honestly, I feel like that is a good representation of what each character was like in this episode compared to the real world. But the biggest thing about it was that this was an episode that was focused on Gangle. And I really like that about her because we learned a little bit more about her. For one thing, the fact that she used to work at fast food, which was a good little hidden detail about that. And the fact that she just was struggling so much. Plus, one of the biggest things that I really liked about this episode was every time somebody did or say something that like was uh let me think of how to reword this. So essentially every time the other character said something to make her unhappy, or when Pomni basically gestured, yeah, your authority isn't real here. Um, we it it immediately went the shot immediately went to a close up of Gango's mask with a little king sound, and I actually really like that because it essentially with her as some of the voice actors called it, the manic mask, it was plastic, so it wouldn't break. But every time we got that little chink sound, I like that because essentially it was saying, yes, that is what it would take for her mask to break. Um, and I actually really liked the episode. It was just like so much fun seeing like returning NPCs and like getting to see like their character personalities work off each other in this environment. And it led to one of the best streams from the cast doing the fast food stream, which in that one, I loved how they all essentially swapped personalities. Notably with Michael and Amanda, the voices of Jax and Ragatha. Um, because they both like swapped personalities. Michael was more helpful with everything, and Amanda just was screwing everything up. It was just so much fun watching that stream. And essentially every time I rewatch episode 4, almost immediately after I go check out the fast food stream, or at least the highlights of it, because it's always just so much fun to just rewatch them and just see all the fun shenanigans that Amanda gets up to in that. Um, so yeah, and episode 4 honestly has been one of my favorite episodes in it because it kind of goes into some of the hardships that happen in the workplace, kind of thing, regardless of what's uh, job or option you have for that specific job. Um, then we had episode 5, which was a bit more focused. Wait, which one was episode 5? Oh, yeah. Then we had episode 5, which was essentially kind of the fun episode. And that one was just so much fun because there was a lot of different, what's it called? What should we call it? Adventures that went on for that. And I really liked that one because it showed different suggestion box adventures. And if I remember correctly, we got either 5 or 6 that were from the different characters. So it definitely showed off with some of their personalities and what they really liked. So when it came to Jax's suggestions, it was basically just again, just screwing around with everybody. When it was Gangel's suggestion, it was like just an anime, which I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I would love to see an anime based on the series where they're just all in high school again. Um, just because each of them looked very fun in the designs for the characters in the show were very fun. Also, with the fact that Kinger's also with Kinger's confusion, just the today we're going to learn the popular foreign language known as English. And then when it cuts back to that shot, it's just Kinger in the background just going while looking at the screen at the chalkboard, just wondering how the heck that works. And it's just so much fun on that one. And then with Kinger's with was presumably Kinger's suggestion, which was just stargazing, just sitting down on the field, just looking up at the stars while fireflies are just all around, kind of thing. Um, there were definitely a lot of people who theorized that that could have been a suggestion that either Kinger or Queenie had. Um, and I kind of agree with them because Kinger felt so at home in that. Like there wasn't anything that was like going on kind of thing. And literally when we watch it, when they arrive there, I want to say I think Gangle and Zubul were just starting to sit down or something, and Kinger was already sitting down, just enjoying the food kind of thing. So I would assume that it was something that he or Queenie put into the suggestion box for like maybe something of a date idea or something. And I actually really like that. Um, then there was Zubul's suggestion, which was all of them at a bar. And on top of the fact that it was just funny with Kinger that entire time, um, we also got to learn more about all the characters kind of thing. So like Zubul used to be a bartender and a tattoo artist. Gangle was in was in art school for a couple of years. Ragatha was something of real estate and had an overbearing mother. Um, Pomni was an accountant before coming to the digital circus and such, and she liked to explore abandoned buildings and was a bit of a part-time YouTuber. I can relate to that. And Jax told a fake story that was a Breaking Bad reference, which I didn't even get when I first watched it. So I was in the same boat as Ragatha in wondering what he was talking about. Um, but the bigger thing was I knew what Breaking Bad was, and yet I didn't get the reference to it. Mostly because Zubul cut off Jax as he was talking. Um, and but the biggest thing about that whole scene was that I could literally just watch an entire 30-minute episode of them just sitting in a bar talking, and I would just be okay with it. There was so much that we learned from them in that episode, and just a lot that was going on too. And it was just so nice to have it be a slow moving scene where we got to know the characters a little bit more rather than the more fast paced, colorful stuff that went on for a majority of the other seasons or episodes. Um, and then there was Ragatha's suggestion, which was playing softball, which that one was just funny because of Gangle not getting an evil clone. Um, and the fact that Kane literally has no clue how softball works. So he's literally just like trying to shoo them all through uh, getting this done because he wants to do his own adventures. Um, but the biggest thing about it was just once again, Kinger just be having the best lines in the entire show. But essentially, yeah, episodes 4 and 5 have been my favorite episodes of the series. Just because episode 4 kind of shows the what the real world essentially is compared to the digital circus and how that can really affect like our characters. And then episode 5 was just great because we got a little more insight into what each character was like. Then we had episode 6, where they literally just run around shooting guns at each other. Um, Thankfully, they can't die in the digital circus, but it was just so much fun seeing all the character teams kind of thing. With the fact of Kinger and Ragatha being teamed up, that was just a lot of fun seeing them together. Because from what we know, Ragatha doesn't know too much about Kinger. Apparently, Kinger was already crazy when she arrived, and that really made things very interesting. But just the fact that when they're both in the dark kind of thing, and after they both lost the uh to the game, he literally just sits next to her and just turns on dad mode. And as everyone says, I just love his dad mode. It's so much fun. Um Also, the episode just has my favorite line from Gangle, which is the "We need to find the Tommy gun," and I just felt so happy for her in that episode because, like, she gets the Tommy gun and just starts laughing maniacally as she's shooting and missing Pomni and Jax. Um, then when she loses, her mask breaks, but the way that we've seen it before is that whenever the mask breaks, it starts off with like the happy mask kind of thing, and then it breaks, and she's suddenly just sad. But in this, but this time around, when she falls onto the ground, her mask is just like smile is just has a bit more of a neutral face. Um, and when it shatters, her tragedy mask has the biggest smile on, and that just really helped to solidify that it didn't matter this time around which mask she had. She was just happy regardless. And I really like that about the her moment there. Um the episode was also supposed to be a Jack centered episode, and I can see how it is that. The only problem with it really was that we didn't get to know Jax himself. We only got to know like Jax's personality in the circus. Um, so we didn't get to know any of like his backstory or anything. We just were learning why he's always mean to everyone and why he just doesn't seem to care. Um, because as he says, none of this is real. So we can literally do anything. Um, and I think I would have preferred there to be a little bit more to his character kind of thing. Because essentially, especially because this was the first episode that featured him beginning the who let me just start around that. I think I would have liked a little bit more about him personally because this was essentially the first episode to this was essentially the episode that began his downward spiral into what eventually happened in the finale. Spoiler alert, he abstracts. Um, and it really like made things so much more interesting to rewatch. Um, the following episode, episode 7, was one of the biggest episodes essentially, and I kid you not, I had to watch that like 3 or 4 times in a row just to understand and cope and finally like stop having my jaw drop onto the floor and finally like put things into like a perspective because that episode essentially was just like the characters trying to figure out a way out of the circus. A mysterious character named Abel comes in to help them, but then at the end it's revealed that Kane created this as an adventure. Um, and It was like the episode ended on such a huge cliffhanger that I was, well, partially uh, angry at the show for doing that. Um, but it was just so much interesting that went on in the episode. But my favorite part about it was just the beginning with the fact of um, Kane using a Chinese door and just goes, I don't know, I don't speak Chinese. Um, but one of the biggest things about the episode was that it was something of a beach episode as well. And I just love the fish that Bondi talks with. Just because, one, they are so low quality that you could say that they were from like the early Nintendo 64 days. And two, just the fact of my favorite part being, so I was talking with my brother here, and yeah, you are definitely not getting our sunken treasure. Definitely not. I'm the one who tells the lies. Dude, you ruined it. And legit, that always made me laugh. Um, and the fact that they brought those two back for the pre-movie announcement when the Amazing TADC The Last Act came out in theaters. That that honestly was like my favorite part of the entire movie. Just the fact that they brought them back. Um, but yeah, episode 7 was like the heaviest episode, especially since we got like quick flashes of Jack's like from the real world, from his memory. And it was just so much that was left unanswered in that episode that we had to wait so long to figure out, kind of thing. Then we got to episode 8, which that one was one of the was also shown for TADC The Last Act. It was episodes 8 and 9. Um, with episode 8, that was like one of the biggest episodes for me. Because one, it had Kane's crash out, and I just loved that about him. I more so, not just him. I loved that about the entire scene, because it was just so much that was building and building and building until he just loses it. And I really do like, I really did like that, and because it was just so much that had been going on since the start of the season of the series. Um, and with the fact of everybody now being against him and hating the fact that they can't leave and he lied to them about it, it just makes his crash out like feel all the more real and everything. Um, and essentially, it was the closest thing to his to going back to I have no mouth and I must scream, because he talks about how he hates humans, and it was really really interesting to see his crash out like this. Um, and then the fact that they just gave him a song, that was that was like the funniest part of the entire thing. Um, So I will admit, when I first saw the episode, I legit had my mouth like to the ground. Like I've seen some reaction videos where people are watching the episode and they start laughing and going, "Whoa, they just gave him a song when the music begins," kind of thing. But with me, I was literally just like my face legit was throughout like his entire monologue to the cast and for the song kind of thing because I was like less getting into all the silliness and more just terrified of Crash Out Kane. Um, and but honestly, in my more recent rewatches, I've just sung along with Kane because it is a fun song. It is a really fun song that has some very catchy lyrics. But the biggest thing about it is that Kane then just starts being more cruel towards everyone. And That was something that was a little bit less fun, but still pretty funny with Kinger. Um, but I also like that they used the opportunity to call back to the very first teaser for the Amazing Digital Circus. Because in episode 8, Pomni starts to take a bite of a sandwich and then disappears. Then I went and saw the original teaser, and in that, when Pomni shows up, she's holding her hands like this and looking like she's about to take a bite of something. Um, then Kane just starts throwing knives at her for no reason. And when Pomni returns in episode 8, she's covered in knives. And really liked that about it because she was, because this basically said, okay, we have this point where Kane is just crashing out and making like terrible decisions and going all crazy. Let's just call back to the original teaser. And I really did like that about it. Um, and also, this episode had some of my favorite moments with Kinger, mostly from his whole monologue about his past and who he was, and working with CNA and creating Kane. Um, and when I rewatched it in the movie theater, I didn't realize how amazing the musical score was because the music undertoned the entire monologue, and I wasn't able to hear it on YouTube. I'm sure if I turned it up loud enough on my TV or on my phone, I could hear the music, but it felt so much more engaging with the music in the theater. And that's what I really loved. Also, with the fact that episode 8 and 9 had so many callbacks to the other episodes. Episode 8 had callbacks to episode 1 with the fact of, what was it, Pomni leaving to go get a console. She literally walked by locations and items and even looked in the same mirror that she did in episode 1. Um, this time touching her face with the opposite hand. Um, and the biggest thing about it is just when she goes through the doors. Episode 1, she goes through frantic. She's trying to find a way out. She's trying to escape. But every time another door passes, she gets more and more frustrated, goes more and more insane. But this time around, every time that she goes through a door, she's basically, her head goes, yes, 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 really? Um, and and I actually really loved that about it because it showed her character growth and how much she uh, has come to care for her friends. Um, Also, with the fact that Bubble is just so much fun in this episode, just the fact of I think my favorite scene of Bubble has to be the point when it's just, wow, Kane, you are so funny. Could you say it with a little more gusto? That's better. It's like that was just my favorite one, and every time I rewatch it, I just burst into laughter and nearly laugh my heart out of my body, kind of thing. It's just so funny. Um, and I can't believe Gooseworks was able to make Bubble so fun. Um, but yeah, episode 8 essentially ends with Kinger accidentally killing Kane and deleting him from the entire server. And just the circus goes gray and starts breaking apart. And without Kane, there's no more swear filter. And I actually really liked the way that the episode ended. With the fact of when I saw the last act, I saw why they ended it there. Where else would you end it? As like a cliffhanger uh, to draw people in to watch the final episode. I literally could not think of anywhere that they could have cut it, especially after seeing the last act as well. Because when it got to the episode 9 part, there was literally no point when they could have made a cut to make it two more episodes kind of thing, or cut to have it be that have it be a little bit more for episode 8. And then we come to the final episode, which that one actually was pretty fun because it started off with like the same intro that we got in the pilot episode, but it was different. Um so I will admit when first went to see it, I saw that intro come up, and instinctively my mind, as soon as the music started, my mind went to like saying Kane's thing, but then it clicked that I was like, wait a minute, nothing's being said. What is going on here? And then it clicked for me. Kane's gone. There's nobody to give the intro anymore. But then it also just made it even more creepy with the fact of the child singing the theme song. But this time including Pomni. Um, so it really felt more, shall we say, uh, final, that the characters were just stuck here now. Um, so the actual episode definitely goes like the hardest, and I do appreciate that for it. Um, with the fact of all the characters now realizing that they are not real at all and just only a brain scan, not of, and just a something of a memory of people. Um, the Gooseworks has said that the show takes place. I believe Gooseworks said 2017 or something. Um, so so the biggest thing about it is just that is what the characters are from that point up to that point. So it's essentially saying, so it essentially says, if we were in that place, what would the memory be from 2017? What were we like then? That is what the characters are. And, or at least when Pomni arrives. Um, and I actually, it's a little bit hard to explain. But essentially, while that was something of a bit more of a darker tone for it, I really did kind of like that because yes, all of them had these like traumas and experiences. Um, so, but then when they entered the circus, they were able to get new experiences, new traumas, and become entirely new people. It was a little bit different for everybody because um it was a little bit different of the experience for everybody because Kinger went from a computer scientist to a crazy dad. Ragatha went from a someone who is like like wanting to get away from her family because of her overbearing mother, and she turned into something of a guiding light for the others. Uh, Gangle seemed to have been injured in a car accident, like right before she was brought into the circus. Um, and instead of like having that be something, and she was able to make some great friendships there. Zubul just didn't like the way that they were and wanted to leave their mark in the world somewhere. While they did say that in the episode, it also said in episode 8, it also said that they left a mark in Gangle's life as well. Pomni was just someone who was more of a loner. She didn't have any friends really. And instead, in the show, she makes some of the best friends that she can with all the other characters. Um, and Jax, however, Jax never really changed. It was that he grew a different personality than what it seemed that he started with. In the real world, as we learn, he was someone who said something to his mother after his dad left. We aren't told what it is, but from certain context clues, from like his bedroom to how he told his story later on in the episode, and to the fact of just what some of the actors and even Gooseworks have said, kind of thing, it seems that he's transgender. And instead of doing something that like embraces that kind of thing, he just turns into a huge sadistic, laughing, maniacal moron kind of thing. Not moron, like a sadistic person. He essentially becomes the Joker, um, which I don't really know how to feel about it because I've gone through several points where uh, like I've done things that I felt like I shouldn't have done. I think we all have. And whenever I do that, I beat myself up about it. But when there are people who want to talk to me about it, I share with them. I maybe don't share everything about it, but I share enough that the pain doesn't hurt. And everything like works out to a better today and tomorrow. Um, Everything still does happen, but with my friends and family, I'm able to find a way to make it work and find a way to see tomorrow as better. Um, but Jax, he just turned into a sadistic, laughing, maniacal person and pushed everyone away. And that's what led to several others abstracting. Um, One of the biggest scenes about it was in a flashback kind of episode where I'm not gonna lie, Michael Kovac did such an amazing job on the monologue. I'm not gonna discredit him for that. The thing that I am gonna discredit a bit is something that I did hear a couple people talk about. So in the flashback segments, we get our looks at Kaufmo and Ribbit, who were Jax's friends in the circus. The biggest thing about it was that there was a scene between Jax and Ribbit where Jax poured out his life story for her. The way that it worked out was that we were seeing things from Jax's point of view, and so we were feeling everything that was going on in his head. Um, but then during Jax's story to Ribbit, the camera shifts. Like it doesn't cut to a different scene, but the camera slowly moves around to show us Jax's face. And some people took a little bit issue with this, because, and I do partially agree with them. By keeping the camera from Jax's point of view, we as the audience would be able to feel what Jax is going through and what his experience was. But I also have to kindly disagree as well, because from the way that I see it, with Michael Kovac, we definitely got a really good like monologue from him. Regardless of anything, it was a great monologue, and you definitely feel all the emotion behind it. But when it got to a certain point of it, we definitely needed to see a little bit more of his facial reaction kind of thing. When it was him in the middle of his story, I it's a little bit hard to explain, but essentially, while I would have liked to have had the entire thing be from his point of view, it's also great that we didn't because I personally would have gotten a little bit tired if the camera just kept going, if essentially the camera just kept going like this. And honestly, I would have found that a little bit too much kind of thing. Um, Not saying that it wouldn't have worked as well, but I felt like we needed to see something of Jax's reaction. And when he says that he pushed his mother and away when she hugged him after calling him out and stuff, calling him a lot of things, he pushed his mother and then ran. I feel like we needed to get his facial reaction on that. And I'm glad that we did because it was just so much that was going on for it. And when Ribbit puts her bow tie onto Jax's head, with many people saying that that was her accepting him as a transgender, um, it was. I do like that we also got his facial reaction during that as well. Um, because otherwise, I don't think we would have really caught on what was going on. Um, and yeah, that was, I feel like if anything, that was the only scene where we definitely needed to get some facial reaction from Jax. Um, the only problem about it is getting his facial reaction happened halfway through his monologue. And I feel like we could have gotten it a little bit earlier because there are just points in it where we're just looking at his hands or just looking at across the room or at Ribbit. And it can get a little boring. I get with why they did it at that point, but it felt a little. I feel like we could have gotten like the facial reactions from Jax a lot sooner. Um, so there is that. But that's also a bit of a complaint that I have for episode 9 for as a whole. There are several points when in the episode when I feel like it could have been cut sooner. One of the biggest things is the hug between Pomni and Ragatha. While I do agree that it is very powerful, and I did personally tear up for it at the point when it happened, um, the shots of them walking away felt like they went on forever. And I don't really want that to happen. I feel like they should have been cut down at least 30 seconds or something. That way it could have felt a little more um, that way the pacing could have been a little bit better, in my opinion. Um, because that plus Jax's big monologue definitely felt like they slowed the pacing down a little bit in the movie. Um, and one of the other biggest things was that in abstracted Jax's mind, we saw a lot of different doors, which essentially were in Jax's head, what if everyone else abstracted except me? So we got to see points for Ragath, if Ragatha abstracted, if Zubul abstracted, and if Gangle abstracted. Each of these were pretty fun for different reasons. With Ragatha abstracting, Jax would have just gone deeper into his sadistic nature. With Gangle abstracting, it essentially turned into a freaking Looney Tunes cartoon. And with Zubul abstracting, that one was just the most uncomfortable. Because Jax has just been very cruel to Gangle regardless, but this one just felt even more uncomfortable to watch. Um, but then there was a door there that was bolted up, like wood all over it, kind of thing. And there was also a door that was locked in a different room. I feel like those one. And I know for a fact those ones had to be if Kinger abstracted and if Pomni abstracted. Now, which one is which? I would have assumed that the door that was bolted up was if Pomni abstracted, because he can't think about anything happening to him if she was gone. Uh, in short, both of them connected on a deeper level than he did with any of the other characters. And imagining what it would be like if she was gone and he was left alone again, I feel like if anything, that would just break a man down. And he wanted to repress that as much as he could. The other door, I believe, was if King are abstracted. And I mean, you could make an argument for either one on the bolted door, but the biggest thing is that Kinger, we haven't really seen much of Jackson Kinger. The only things that we do know about the two of them is that Kinger is that Jax sees Kinger as just crazy. Um, but we never see anything more of a relationship between them. So we don't know what their relationship was like. And so I do think that the second door was Kinger's, but it's still something that he doesn't want to deal with because well, we've seen it in some non-canonical like ads and stuff, but from those ones, it seems that they had something of a nice relationship, um, where Kinger just doesn't really care what Jax does because he just enjoys Jax's company. Um, so see, imagining a world without Kinger probably would have just driven Jax like to the brink of not wanting to go on. And I do think that may have been the Jax that was playing the piano and stuff um, in that room. Because he would essentially be like, "Hey, I'm still here. I know how to do these things. I could be the next Kinger." Um, but yeah, it was just like I don't know what it would be like without both of them. And I will say, if I ever do meet Gooseworks or meet anybody from the Amazing Digital Circus, I would love to ask them this question. Just because it felt so much more than anything else in the episode. Um, and I did like how Pomni reaches out to Jax even after he's abstracted, and everybody helps him to have his own little tent within the circus, one that has a good amount of darkness to comfort him. And even Kinger says the darkness soothes them when they're abstracted. And I do really like that about that scene. It's really powerful and it really, really makes the heartstrings be tugged. And one of the biggest things about it is that earlier in the episode, Gangle says, "Why can't I cry for him?" And then, as soon as everything's fixed up and Jax is brought into the tent, that's exactly what she does. She starts crying. And I kid you not, I was the exact same way every single time I've watched the episode. I am right there with Gangle. I don't cry when we first see Jax abstracted. We don't even see what really happened or how abstraction really looks like mid transformation. We've really only seen it in a dream, so we don't know if that's really what it looks like or not. But as soon as everybody works together and Jax is brought in, I just start crying because it's essentially the first time that Jax accepts help from others. And starting to get a little choked up talking about it. And it's just so beautiful to just watch. And yeah. But then we had a bit of a secondary story about it, which I think could have been where they could have cut it to make a secondary episode, but I'm glad that they didn't because that would have been a huge like middle finger to the audience who waited so long for it. Um, but essentially, Kane is still alive. He wasn't killed. He was put into the void, and he has an internal argument with himself. Um, and by the end of it, he finds that he himself is responsible for his own death. He was the one who trapped them. He made them go on the adventures. He made them do things they didn't want to do. And eventually he has to part ways with the other AI, the blue AI. It admittedly makes him less powerful than he already is, but he still has control over the digital circus. And many people have said that Kane is forgiven a little bit too quick, but there's a couple things that we need to remember on this. One, there was a long period of time between when King got deleted and when Jax abstracted, um, which you could see as being somewhere between, like, let's say, in between 3 weeks and a whole month kind of thing. So, or maybe even more. So there was a lot of time when they could just process everything that went on, kind of thing. Um, then there's also the fact that they say it's going to take a while to get all of the trust back, but they're happy that Kane is just back. Um, and third, there's the fact that Kane shows them what their lives are outside of the digital circus. They're still all alive and well. They all have lived such great lives doing everything that they have essentially done in the circus. Ragatha has cut all ties from her family and is living very well with some of her friends. Zubul is someone who made their mark in the world by opening their own bar. Pomni is someone who still works in accounting but has managed to make friends and even includes them in her videos. Kinger is a dad, and he just has such a huge dad basis for it, and still in computer science. Gangle is now an artist, putting her own webcomic on Twitter and Instagram, it seems. And Jax has finally found a way to uh, move away from what he's done. He's moved in with a friend, has a steady job, and is able to just be himself, really, or be themselves. Um, and with the amount of time that passes, and with the fact that Kane shows them everything, and with the fact that they just are happy that he holds no grudge, kind of thing, I can understand how they could forgive him so quickly. And honestly, with everything that Kane did, he doesn't deserve that quick of forgiveness at all. But they're not essentially forgiving him immediately, but they are putting more trust into him, especially when he just comes clean. And that part is definitely more beautiful. Um, and that's what I got out of the finale from it. It wasn't that they were forgiving him, it was that they were trusting him. But I will say one of the biggest things that I really loved about it was that when Kane comes back to the circus, well, first of all, the moon still says that she loves him. Kane never programmed that, but she does anyway. What does that tell you? But also, when Kane comes back to show that he's still alive to the characters, all of them are just like looking like very timid and like, what are you going to do? But the one thing that I did notice, notably on the second time that I watched the movie, was that instead of looking all terrified and stuff, Zubul instead puts herself in front of Gangle. Yes, I did just say herself, but again, from what I've researched, Zubul uses every pronoun. But yeah, Zubul just puts themselves in front of Gangle, like blocking her from Cain and what they would assume would be his wrath. And that was like one of the most like fun times for it. Um, and Cain says that he's going to leave the worlds open so they can all do what they want when they want. And I do really like that about it. Because that was something that Zubul pointed out that he could do in episode 5. Um, but he just wrote it off as stupid. But, and now with all the worlds like open 24/7 kind of thing and everything, it allows them to just go through each thing at their own pace, what they want to do, and it made the ending feel so much more powerful and a nice ending. Um, but then we came to the end credits, and I'll be honest, there was just a lot that was going on for that, and it made me want to see a season 2, or at least some kind of sequel to the show. Um, Sadly, we're not going to get any sequel series, but I would like to see something of like a continuation in some form. We are going to still get non-canonical what are they called? Ads, because they've even kept doing that. But I would love to see something of like a comic or maybe just a one-off episode or something, like set after the events to go into one of these like adventures or something. We got to see a couple of them, but I'd like to see a little bit more. Because the end credits showed off so many fun ideas of what some of these future adventures could be, and some of them seemed like what the cast already went through in some of the live streams. So one of the things was that they have an entire Dungeons and Dragons session, which I will see about leaving a link in the description of this video. I'll actually leave links to all the streams that I've watched and referenced here. But they have a Dungeons and Dragons session, and at one point during like the final montage, uh, we see Gangle, Ragatha, Pomni, and Kane playing what looks like Dungeons and Dragons. And then in the end credits, there's a point where five of the where all the characters except Gangle are dressed in like medieval armor, and Gangle's a huge dragon-like creature. And I'm just like, I would love to see this as an adventure. Um, and then remember when I said that Zubul and Gangle seem to be more than friends? Well, we actually got a bit of an answer for that in the credits, which was that oh, it's like the funniest joke ever. But Ragatha is walking down the hall past all the doors, and what we see is uh we see her go stop next to Zubul's door, and there's just hearts that are floating above it. And I could be mistaken, but I think the door also is moving, like bigger, smaller. Then Ragatha just runs past, and we see Gangle's door is open. So one, yes, they're more than friends. Two, Zubul got her wish in episode 6. Oh my gosh. It was just like such a funny moment that I burst out laughing in the theater as soon as I saw that. Um, but yeah, and then there was also an end credit scene, which was seeing a series of humans sitting around at a bus stop, getting on a bus, and leaving on the bus kind of thing. And both times that I went to the theater, I was confused about this. I was legit thinking, so in my mind, I legit thought, what the heck was that about? Is that to say that the entire world is just continuing to go on without them? Like it doesn't even know that they don't exist? Um, but then a while ago, I found on, I think it was Instagram, that the characters that we saw were the actors for the real world digital circus cast. And that made me look back at it last night and see that, yes, it is the Amazing Digital Circus cast. Um, because, and so it essentially is showing they may know each other in the real world as well, but they don't have the same connection that they do in the circus. And I actually kind of like that kind of ending because it kind of shows that in games we may form great connections with people and be like almost inseparable when going on missions. I'm thinking of things like Call of Duty or what are some of the others? That's the big one that I know. If you guys know of any others that are like that, let me know in the comments. But we form great connections with them to the point that we can't imagine doing missions without them. But in the real world, if we came across them, we probably wouldn't recognize them, especially with the fact that that gamer tags are a lot different than our real names. Except for me, I go by Power Ranger nerd all everywhere. Um, but yeah, it was just a very odd ending, and I felt like it could have been explained a little bit more who the characters were. But I did also like that we didn't get an answer, and uh, and I do like how how I found out about it, and how, and essentially what all of it means. It really was a really fun time, and that is what I have to say about the entire series as a whole. I had such a fun time watching it. There was just so much that went on for the series that I legit don't really know how else to describe it except what I just said here. I did skip out on a lot of the jokes and a lot of the character moments, but there was just so much that goes on in this series. But I might be interested in doing a full-on review of the series. If you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments. And yeah, there was just so much that went on for this show, and I'm really glad that I got to see it. And I do know for a fact that once I am done with watching some of the other shows that I am on, I might be going on to watching other glitch productions like Murder Drones. Yeah, I have not seen that one. But anyway, take care, guys.